Hello, greetings to everyone that is watching. Today I'm going to present about a presentation that has been given to us by our lecturer, which is Miss Lim Siu Jiao, on teachers' ethics, or uh, the specifically for the course Introduction to Educational Study, which is coded in Gppp 1092. And today you are with me. My name is Izane Lincoln Sang Anak Naka. My identification number is 051130131019, and I'm from the batch PPISMP TESOL SK 2024 and 2029. So this is my presentation for task 2. So what are we going to look out about today is, first, I'm going to present about what is ethics and the types of ethics for my first slide. So as we all know, when we think about ethics, we might probably think about a person way of trying to convey goodness or something that is related to something that is good. That is what ethic is. Or ethics, for me personally, believe that ethic is something that we need to do, or how we should act, a guideline on what we should act. So based on my searching, ethic is being definition as principle that governs right or even wrong behaviors, and also it helps individuals to make moral decision. So basically it drives you to do good things. So there are three types that I have found on ethics. So first is personal ethics. So what is personal ethics about? So personal ethics mainly focus on individual values, honesty, and integrity. So basically, it's something that is comes from within. So next up is professional ethics. Where can we usually found about professional ethics? So professional ethics is something that you would usually relates to a workplace. So example like workplace conducts and responsibility, what job you need to do, what is the scope of your job, what should you do in your workplace. That is what we call professional ethics. And last but not least, for the types of ethics is social ethics. So what is social ethics? So social ethics is one of the ethics that can relate to almost everyone, not almost everyone, but actually everyone that live in a social environment, which is respect, fairness, and justice. So all of this leads to a harmonic experience so that everyone can live together. So next up is for my topic. So the most important things that I want to explain is I want to relate what is the importance of ethics and what ethics should a teacher have, because ethics is a big topic that we need to discuss, and how can we relate it to for the profession of being a teacher. Firstly, core principle ethics for teacher. I have found 5 points from my research. So firstly, integrity. So in terms of being a teacher, we need to have an integrity. Why is that? For example, like a situation that has been given here. So being honest in grading, giving feedbacks and interaction. Why is this important? So when we grade, we tend to be some irresponsible teacher. They tend to be biased or trying to change the student marking so that the student will get higher marks, so that it fits, to show that he has a good teaching quality even though it's actually not. Sadly, this will makes the student have a fake type of study, a fake type of benchmark for them to actually be better. So that is something that we need to avoid. So that's why a teacher should have integrity. Next up is fairness. Why is fairness something that is important? So fairness is, in a situation, a teacher should treat all students equally and avoiding favoritism. So, what is favoritism among students? So, a teacher might have this one student that he always looks out for, that he give extra care for, that he's biased towards. So, in this situation, the only person or the only student that is going to improve much more is only that student. So in the class, in the settling environment of a class, we have this group of students which can be rounded upon, or which we can actually put numbers such as 10 people, 20 people, or it can even reach up to 50 people. So to only focus on certain student, it will makes like the whole class average drop. So it's actually not a good thing. So next up is respect. So as we all know, in order to get respect, we need to respect people first. So student actually needs to be respected. So how can a teacher do that? So they should valuing student opinions, backgrounds and rights. By taking this aspect into their matter, teachers will show respect to the student, and when the students are feeling respected by their teacher, they will bound to, or they will more inclined to listen to that teacher, and they can even be fun, and they can believe and giving trust to the teacher more easily, instead of a teacher that doesn't really care about their students. So next up for my fourth point is confidentiality. As we all know, as the era goes by, as we are moving, striving towards this globalization of AI, of anything that connected to our information. So it is important for teachers to be more confidential on protecting the student information and personal matters. So by having this type of protection for a student, they can rely on the teacher to save all their information, or the teacher, this actually have, we can relate to the respect point earlier. The teacher can actually make the student be more safe by probably not sharing his personal matters, or be more sensitive towards his feelings or his personal matters. For example, like some student doesn't really like to be compared with another student. So by taking that note, teacher can avoid like sharing marks. So because it can destroy some of the student confidence, which makes them not really keen towards learning. So for the fifth and the last point on core principle of ethics for teachers is professionalism. As we all know, at a workplace, one thing that is really important is being professional. So a teacher must be 100% at all time, because as we all know, it ranges from kids to teenagers, they are bound to follow the teacher example. So it is the acting role for a teacher to be models, a role model for students. So if the teacher is a good role model, of course they can help in shaping the student character or student development as well. So these are the five important core principle ethics for teachers. And next up is the issue that I have found that can relate to the lack of ethic in teachers that needs to be improved is actually cases of caning in school. Surprisingly, these cases is really common and has been appearing almost every year. So these are the four cases that I have found. Firstly, In the year 2000, a 10-year-old student from Klang received 35 strokes on both hands for late homework submission. So that is actually a very upsetting moment where it seems like you are having too much of a punishment for somebody that is still learning, that is still developing. So next up is in 2009, a class of 9-year-old student in Kuala Lumpur was caned for making excessive noise, leaving welts on their backs. So that is really upsetting. And next up is in 2015, 40 13-year-old girls from Selangor religious schools were caned after none admitted to stealing 100 ringgit worth of money from a fellow student. And for the last cases is in 2019, a 13-year-old student in Johor Bahru was caned for calling her teacher derogatory names, resulting in red welts on her arms and even her legs. So, based on all the cases here that we have seen, that I have found from news outlet and everything, caning is quite a common punishment that can be seen in Malaysia. So, we probably have question and why does it happen? That explain in my next slide, which is why does this happen? So, firstly, traditional disciplinary practice. So, for Malaysia, caning has been a long-standing method of discipline in Malaysian school, influenced by cultural norms and past educational practices. Many of the older generation actually believe that it is an effective way to instill respect and obedience among the students. So basically, if students are scared of being caned, they are much more behave. That is what most people or most older generation thinks. So next up is legal allowance under education policy. So actually, I have found this interesting. Uh, the interesting found that I have made is the Education Act 1996 actually permits for male students to be caned for serious misconduct, making it is legally accepted. It is legal to discipline student that way. So some schools still implement corporal punishment despite growing concern of its impact. So even though the rules or the act might have been changed a bit, it's still some schools still follows this rule, which is not really something that is a great way to actually discipline our student. So next up is belief in immediate behavioral correction. So what does this mean is some teachers and parents see caning as a quick and effective way to control misbehavior because it is something that instant. For example, like a student might be misbehaving and a teacher would threat them. So for example, like in this situation, if you keep on being loud, if you keep on being disrespectful, I'm going to cane you. So that will make sometime it may works that the student are scared of being caned. So they will immediately, it will be instantly, they will have this behaving, they will behave basically. But however, does that last? That is something that we don't know. It can even last or it can only last for a certain period of time. So it's not really something that is kind of outdated in terms of giving discipline to students. So it is used as a deterrent to prevent students from repeating mistakes such as fighting, truancy, and disrespecting teachers. So next up is last but not least on my point on why does this happen is lack of alternative disciplinary methods. So many educators lack training in alternative discipline strategies such as positive reinforcement or counseling. So they don't really have the capacity to actually listen to student, to have to take that time to learn student behavior or search for a different solution to actually solve the problem. So some teachers tend to go to the easiest way, which is just take a cane and then just cane the student. That's it. That's their method of actually instant method that they can do. So school often also have insufficient resources, which is actually such as counseling services. There are not all school that actually give, for example, like a counseling service to handle those behavioral issues without physical punishment. So not all teachers that are being taught of in terms of having a counselor at school, not all school have that. So because of lack of those type of alternative, caning is actually something that is a common solution. So next up is, how can we solve the issue? So here are the 5 points that I have found from my research on how we can solve this issue. So firstly, teachers training on alternative discipline methods. To counter the last point from my last slide is, we need teachers to be to have an alternative to discipline the students. So by this, it requires a balanced approach that ensures discipline while protecting the students' rights, and the solution is this. So the solution will be, teachers should be provided with workshop and training on nonviolent disciplinary techniques. For example, like it is so that you can give counseling, or you can even have other methods easily set. So it is to promote positive reinforcement instead of punishment. So I found that it is much better to, for us teacher, or for those teacher, to actually reinforce the student with the positive aspect instead of giving them punishment. So it actually, why do I say this much better? Because you can actually show, or you can actually give the solution to the student for him to avoid this thing instead of giving the punishment. They doesn't know how to act well. So we teach them how to act well. So next is, this is one of the method is, encourage counseling based approach for student behavior issues for every school. So next up is stricter regulation and enforcement. So the Ministry of Education should review and strictly regulate corporal punishment policies. So as the eras gone by, as the each things gone by, we need to make sure that our rules or regulation is being updated. And next up is promote positive reinforcement instead of I'm sorry. Next up is ensure clear guidelines on appropriate disciplinary measures. So to avoid the teacher from going to the method of caning, the Ministry of Education can actually try to have a regulation, or a standard, or a guideline for them to show or to do what they need to do if a student is behaving this way. So next up is, schools should report and monitor disciplinary action to prevent abuse. Of course, it started with caning. Caning is probably still a small matter for some parents, They might allow their child to be canned, or some teachers might find it just a normal thing. But the thing is, those things might lead to another. For example, like you may be the child might be caned at the first time, but as more anger pent up, it might actually lead them to actually do much more. For example, like maybe can on hand at first, or you can even get caned on the buttocks. So all of this might leave marks, which is actually not a great thing for us students to see as an educator. So next point is student and parental awareness. So we need to the teacher should educate students on their rights and how to report abusive discipline. This is to avoid too much punishment being put on the student. So next up is encourage parents to monitor and engage with school about discipline policies. So if the school know about the policies, of course they are gonna do better, and they will have this tendency to follow a uh, much better hard way to solve the student disciplinary issues. Okay, and next is legal consequences for misuse of caning. So for those teachers that is using caning, we can implement legal consequence for teachers who abuse this type of punishment, so that it can ensure school follow the child protection laws as per international human rights standards. So last but not least is establish complaint and counseling mechanism. So, to set up a student-friendly complaint channel to report excessive punishment, so they have somebody to talk to in case this teacher is going too much. And each school needs to be provided with school counselor to address the student behavioral issues. So this is much better, so it doesn't involve physical punishment. So next up is the ethical principle that we need to explain about is a teacher with the hearts of an educator. So a teacher with the heart of an educator is actually something that we need to learn, we need to see. So, from based on my founding, a teacher with the heart of educator is someone that is goes beyond just delivering lessons, and they teach with passion, empathy, and deep commitment in their student growth. So here are the 5 points. So first is teachers with purpose. So what does teachers with purpose means? Teachers with purpose is actually view teaching more than a job, but a mission to shape the student life. So next up is cares for student well-being. So it prioritizes not just academic success, but also the student emotional and personal development. And the third is lead by example. Leading by example instill a good values, ethics, and lifelong learning habits in students. And next up is adapts and grows. So adapt and grows means continuously improve their teaching methods to meet the needs of every student, so that the student wouldn't feel neglected and so on. And last but not least, a teacher with a heart of educator is inspires and motivates. So, I'm sorry, inspires and motivates actually encourage students to be curious, confident, and resilient in their learning. So, that comes to my next up stuff is to relate the issues of the caning in Malaysian school. We have SKPM, which is Standard Quality Pendidikan Malaysia, that we can analyze it through the relevant domains and standard outlined in SKPM. So, first standard is leadership. How can we relate this? So, how we can relate this by, for example, school leaders must ensure that discipline methods align with the ethical, the one that I talked about, and legal standard. So they should monitor teacher disciplinary action and promote a positive school culture without excessive corporal punishment. So that will lead to a better school. So that's why SKPM is here. So the next standard is standards 2, which is organizational management. So school must have clear policies on student discipline, following Ministry of Education guidelines, and the implementation of alternative disciplinary methods should be included in the school standard operating procedures. So the SOP. So while following these alternative disciplinary methods, it shows that the way the organize the management is better instead of just solving stuff just by canning. And then next up is standard 3, which is curriculum, co-curriculum, and assessment. So this we should have teachers that should be trained in a non-violent discipline through professional development programs. So this program actually leads to, how we can say it is, they can lead to solving the issue without having violence. So student behavioral education should be incorporated into moral and even civic studies to reduce the needs for harsh discipline. So they won't feel harsh, they will feel much more safer at school. So next up is standard 4. Standard 4 is teaching and learning. So caning negatively affect the student emotional well-being and learning motivation. As we all know, if you get punishment like physically, of course the student is not gonna be too fun, or they might not even have any spirit to even study. They might even wanted to skip school because they know if they go there they would be hit, which is very upsetting. Despite we us knowing, we are actually making them stray away from education. So that is actually a really bad thing to do to solve this problem. So teachers should adopt positive reinforcement strategy instead of corporal punishment. So this strategy can lead to a much better student tolerance, so they will feel safe, they don't need to be hit, so they will still keep their learning motivation and they can actually see themselves improving day by day. And then standard 5, last but not least, is student development, which is schools should focus on holistic student development, ensuring students feel safe and respected. So caning doesn't really relies on respect. So if you respect the student, you should not be caning. So and then providing counseling and mentoring programs can help address behavior issue without resorting to caning. So when we have counseling, of course we don't need to have like this, we have another method to actually solve the problem, so that is will contribute to the student development. So the SKPM promotes quality education, emphasizing a safe and supportive learning environment. So caning actually contradicts the SKPM vision of student-centered education, and the punishment or the way we need to avoid to stop the student bad behavior is we can actually replace it with modern ethical discipline methods. So that is all from me that I have explained, and thank you for Miss Lim Siu Jiao for making us find this type of topics so that we can get a deeper understanding. Based on to conclude, based on myself, that I have found that all the study that I have found is actually um, with the SKPM we can actually found more methods that can actually suited in order to give not punishment but actually help student in building their own characteristic instead of us being so intense, which can drive away the student from learning, which is actually something that we should not do, because student efforts of even coming to school is actually something that we need to actually praise of, because they are giving efforts to even be there. And what matters is when they are there we can actually find out what is the student problem, we can solve it face to face without having this type of online type of learning. So just by that type of topic we can avoid this punishment but actually build the character for the student in a positive way. So that's all from me. Thank you and have a good day and night. That's all.